Good morning, class. Good day, class. I do that. I don't know why I do that. Anyway, it's morning for me, obviously. I wanted to discuss your final paper and give you an understanding of the demands. I've changed it a few times over the last 24 hours or so. So we want to be aware of these new wrinkles. It's still 98% the same question. I'm just changing how I present the question to you and the instructions. So I want to go through this. The first thing you should know about your final essay is that it is based on your task paragraph summarizing LBJ's demand for optimistic war information. That will be task number 4 or 5. I'm sorry, I don't know the number, but you know the task. It's the summary task, the last one you did. And you've been asked to revise it. Give me a revised version with some corrections. So let's be on top of that. Make sure that you take this step by step. Take the first one, look at my comments, take the second draft of your summary paragraph and look at my advice on that. I can tell whether you've looked based on this icon here for viewed, Etranel. I haven't looked at your paper yet. Yeah, so I'll know if you are actually using my input here, just beyond the fact that, you know, if your papers don't change, if they don't improve, it will hurt your grade going forward. The grade you earn will be less, obviously, it will be lower. All right, so let's deal in this. This is a version of your summary task on chapter 11. And what we're dealing with here, excuse me, is a question that has been a little specified since your summary task. This is why I can't say it's 100% the same question. I wanted to ask something that will work out over the course of 2,000 words, about 5 pages. So here's your new question. I'll have the machine read it to you. I kind of like doing that.
Question. Using only the course materials, explain how misrepresented U.S. intelligence, the corrupted data that flowed from Vietnam to President Johnson, impacted his decisions during the escalations.
Yeah, okay. So there's your question. Now, this is adjusted slightly. I'm talking about here for this essay, the incoming data, intelligence information reports from Vietnam to Lyndon Johnson. The previous version of this allowed you to, and you'll see these in these notes, allowed you to discuss the optimistic information the Johnson administration was putting out. In other words, the lies they told to the public. And certainly the book can be read as thematically about the lies Johnson told the public. But a much more interesting theme is developing kind of underneath that. And that is that, you know, beyond the lies he told, what's kind of weird in here and needs to be explored. This is one of many things that need to be explored by Young. But this moment, why did the president demand to be lied to? What does that tell you about him? What does that tell you about his management style? What does that tell you about the way he was making decisions at this crucial junction in the war when American efforts in Vietnam were escalated? Now, I've given you 2 as well of structure for this. I want you to go about doing this in 2 steps. First part of the essay will be the first step. Second part will be the second step. It works like this. So this is development and structure. First, explain how you know that from the sources, Young, and then maybe as well the documentaries. Explain how you know that from the sources that LBJ asked his staff and advisors to lie to him. That's there. You have to reread it. Thankfully, in your writing process, you've already done your annotation of the whole book. And you're really looking at chapters 6 through 11 or 12 here. That's where Young is about the Johnson administration, and parts of that will deal in, directly or indirectly, this demand to be lied to. If we can step back and sort of personalize for a moment, as you can do in your conclusion, what is it like to work for a boss who demands to be lied to? What are your expectations of such a person? So we want to, reflecting on those kinds of issues can help us sort of understand his management style, his psychology, and so on and so forth, and how hard it was to work for this administration. Not that we should cry for them, because man, they made some big mistakes and cost a lot of people their lives. So there are two notes about this. First of all, we're going to, like I said, explain how you know that Johnson was asking his staff and advisors to lie to him. And the second step, the second part of the essay is explain the impact of this demand to be lied to on the war at these critical moments. So there we go. That's what we're looking for structurally and developmentally. Our main emphasis will be on Young. Our secondary emphasis can be on the documentaries. The way I envision this is that you present Young and that you use the documentaries to back up Young and your point of view. It's a little hard to phrase that in a central question. I'm working on it. So I'm just using only course materials. And this is important. I don't want you going out of the course materials. I don't want you on Wikipedia. I don't want you looking at YouTube videos. I want you to deal in random YouTube videos. I've posted YouTube videos. You should use those. I want you to deal in what the course material tells you. This is a very important unity and focus issue in your writing process. I want you to know what the materials I've given you and assigned to you say. And then you build your viewpoints off of that. You can agree, you can disagree, you can deepen, you make associated points. All of that is wonderful stuff, and you definitely should. Two notes here, which I've already hinted at. The first one is you've already drafted something like this when you did that summary paragraph and you're revising it as we speak, or just as you've completed it now. It's due very soon. If you haven't turned it in, please turn it in. Anyway, two notes about this. So what you're dealing in is you've already created something like a body paragraph with that summary of chapter 11. It's going to have to be reworked. And certainly you don't want to summarize the whole book over a series of paragraphs. What you want to do is mix it up, as I point here. Use quotations, paraphrases, and summaries to get your answer across. But you're going to have to know that even though we've been training you to revise this potential body paragraph, it's not exactly the same question I asked you. This is not quite the same as the summary paragraph on chapter 11. Instead, what's going on here is I've narrowed it. See, originally you would be able to have presented an argument about the lies Johnson and his administration told the public. That was an option in summarizing it in chapter 11, because that was in chapter 11, all the lies he told the public. But also in chapter 11 was this bit about the demands he made to be lied to. He wanted his staff to lie to him about how the war was going. I want you to see that material. It's not just in chapter 11, it's certainly in chapter 11, but it goes all the way back to at least chapter 6, after the fall of Diem and the assassination of JFK. So yeah, what we've got here is check my annotations on your first draft of that summary of chapter 11. And if you're looking at it, you should see a comment called model paragraph number 1. That's the one I want you to look at. Model paragraph number 2 actually takes us through the lies Johnson told. Model paragraph number 1 takes us through the lies he demanded. And we want to make an absolute distinction between these two. So check out that comment. Notice how I did that. If you're still giving me overviews of the whole chapter, you're missing the point and your grade's going to suffer for it. I didn't ask you what the whole paragraph, what the whole chapter says. I asked you what it says in regards to a particular point. If you have been annotating that first required step of any writing project, you're ready to change your focus. You've already digested the material on its face value. Now you can go through and look for themes, undercurrents, hidden meanings, interpretations that require some brainstorming and critical thinking. So what do you require here? What does this require? A content predictive, unified thesis. Make sure it's there. Make sure that your thesis answers the question. Do not give me a thesis that is a statement of intent. This paper will be about no. What's your argument? Answer the question. Don't say, this paper will answer the question as it goes along. No, you have to be on top of this from the very beginning, from that introductory paragraph, right? The last couple of sentences of the intro will be your thesis. And you don't want a thesis that says, hey, I'm going to get around to the answer. No, answer it. That means that when you learn things from the writing, that you adjust your thesis as well as your outline, as you're about to see. So get your unified content predictive thesis down. It will develop over time. There's the thesis, the working thesis, the rough draft thesis that you develop in your pre-writing. And then there's the thesis that keeps getting corrected and narrowed and sharpened and corrected. That occurs when you're doing the drafting. As we said, drafting is learning as much as it is about the presentation that you're developing. It is about realizing what you've got to say about it. Our second issue here is make sure that you're vivid in your details from the Young book, as well as from the documentaries. If you choose to use the documentaries, you must use the Young book. That's required. I break this down. I don't want you to use generalities about world and people. If you say Vietnamese, I don't know who you're talking about. Do you mean Vietnamese communists, Vietnamese villagers, Vietnamese landlords? So development reasons, don't use the world or people or the Vietnamese or the US. It's not the US, it's the Johnson administration. In fact, not the Johnson administration, it's McNamara, right? Don't forget that documentary. The Fog of War tells you something about this question of being lied to and asking to be lied to. Notice that in Fog of War. You can use it. Make sure that you mix together quotation, summary, and paraphrase. Apply all your source integration techniques, the ones you've been practicing with your tasks. Your paragraphs will be built around statistics, stories, quotations, and events from Young and the documentaries. Make sure you write about the words. Make sure that you recognize you're writing about Young right there at the forefront, writing about Young's writing about Vietnam, okay? But we don't want to skip that middle filter, Young, in explaining what we're trying to get across, because Young is providing you this information. We want to understand what she has to say. Yeah, good paragraphing will be built around those quotations, summaries, and paraphrases. I'll remind you, if you're starting with a quote, a paraphrase, a summary, or a fact, you don't have a topic sentence. You are looking for it. Start commenting on what you're presenting, the statistic or the fact or whatever it is. Start commenting on it. As you comment your way down, you will be developing a topic sentence to put at the top, and then, of course, refocus what you're presenting. Good paragraphing absolutely must be done. Make sure that you unify every paragraph around this point, that about the LBJ administration's collection of misrepresented intelligence. And you need a conclusive answer, the answer that will serve as your thesis. Use an outline. In fact, as you see here, I'm going to require you give me your final working outline, your finalized outline, if you will. Attach that to the front, attach it to the back. It must be attached to your paper, and it's not part of the required 2,000 words. Okay. I want this essay itself, not the works cited page, not the outline, to be 2,000 words. You can go a little over, you can go a little under, it won't hurt your grades, but make sure that you answer the question and do it in, as you see here, MLA format. The main rule I want to present to you is this. Out of MLA requirements, if you simply take a quote from Young and drop it into your essay without introducing it with a signal phrase, without telling us whether that's Young or McNamara or Johnson, whose words are those? If you do that, I can't pass you. Do not toss in information from sources without a proper signal phrase introducing. I can't, a little bit reasoning for this has to do with the fact that I don't want you getting out of this class and going on to your next class not knowing what MLA format is or format is. Once you learn MLA, you can learn any of the other formats very quickly. But I can't have you going on to English 3 or social, whatever it is, without being able to do this. Every bit of academic writing you see uses signal phrases. Signal phrases are there in Young, they're there in our model essays, they're there in your newspapers. If you're reading a story about the Lakers, you're going to see quotes from the Lakers players. Those quotes will always be introduced or framed, because sometimes you put a signal phrase afterwards, by naming the person in a signal phrase, right? All right, so use signal phrase for every quote, summary, paraphrase, and statistic. Let me change that because that's absolutely critical. Let me change that. Every statistic, quotation, summary, and paraphrase. A brief word about quotation. Avoid, if you want to do well here, avoid full sentence quotation. Show your emphasis by editing your quotation, the quote. Cut out information or words or phrases in the quote that you are not actually dealing in the commentary. Try and get your presented evidence as close to your discussion points as you can get it. Edit for your emphasis. Treat the quote. Don't just throw it out there, and certainly make sure you use a signal phrase. You're going to want to distinguish between primary voices and secondary sources, or direct sources and indirect sources. Sources can be things like eyewitnesses. You hear from a lot of eyewitnesses in the documentaries. Sources can also be experts at the time, or for that matter, experts in 2021. The issue here is that you make it clear who is saying what, and that you use Young as your primary source for that. The documentaries are there for support. You can feature certainly the documentaries, but the main thing I want you to address is Young, because she is your main course material, isn't she? All right, and our final bit here is you need to give me a works cited page. Now, you haven't done this since the Why France essay. I didn't ask for a works cited page with your tasks. I saw several of you gave those to me, and I think that's great practice, but it wasn't required. Now I'm going to require it, and it's got to be double spaced. It's got to be reverse indented. Get yourself, whether it's the signal phrases and source integration or the MLA format, get yourself to the Writing Center for the most active engagement on these issues. If you want to use YouTube, please know that you're not actually practicing it. You're intaking the information, which is critical, but you're not actually practicing it the way you would if you went to the Writing Center. Okay, So there you go. And this will be due the Saturday after your final. Saturday the 18th by 11:59 p.m. I think that's all I want to tell you about this. Certainly drop me an email or get on the discussion boards to ask your questions if any of this is unclear. I'm looking forward to reading your essays and seeing what you do with this original task for chapter 11 and seeing what you do in regards to your new focus, your new options for including quotations and paraphrases, and how you spread this argument out and build it up, development, get your outlines going, they're required. Anyway, so that's my presentation on this. I hope I've been clarifying for you. As I said, drop me a note if I haven't, jump in the discussions, and we will see you soon.